Here it is, everybody. The crypto update episode for 2025, my price predictions, and research on the crypto industry. If you're receiving this episode via text, you're one of the people that I've connected with on crypto in the last 10 years, and I just wanted to thank you. Your opinions and your conversations have shaped the way that I see things, and I appreciate every one of those moments. So I appreciate your support. I hope you enjoy the episode. My predictions are at the end. I have a lot of detailed research that goes into points that are both technical and also everything from political to financial implications of crypto and beyond. So I go into a lot of stuff here. I appreciate your time and look forward to the rest of the year with the crypto bull run accelerating. Let's get it. I'm looking at a 480 to 530 day window after April. So sometime between August of this year and November of this year, I expect to see a true all-time high. Hello and welcome to another crypto update episode here on Duel the Day. I'm Nico, and this one's been a long time coming, everyone. For those of you who have been keeping up with me, I've been doing crypto updates for several years now, and we're kind of in the thick of it. Today's episode will be a little different. I'm going to weave in some counterpoints as I recap my previous crypto perspectives, including Hal Finney's $10 million Bitcoin prediction, go over my predictions for the rest of 2025, and back all of that up with deep macro, historical, and technological analysis. Now, the first thing that I need to frame is Bitcoin and the overall thesis of crypto. So a key point here is scarcity, okay? As I talked about in my crypto monologue and I go over the creation of Bitcoin and all that stuff, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin, period. Okay, that's how that works. Now, all of those 21 million won't be created for another 120 to 140 years. So we have some time. There's still plenty of Bitcoin left, but there's not a lot in the overall grand scheme of things. There's about 5 million Bitcoin that's presumed to be lost from, original early adopter wallets, things like that. And so now you're left with 16 million total if we're assuming that those are lost. Now, currently, there's only 2.5 million Bitcoin on exchanges. So that means that there's not a lot of Bitcoin for people to buy up, especially if major institutions continue to invest as they have. Now, also in previous crypto episodes, you've probably heard me talk about the 4-year halving cycle. Now, the big picture thing that I've researched and found is that every single all-time high that Bitcoin has hit throughout history has happened between 480 and 530 days after halving. Okay? Now, for context, the previous halving was April of 2024. So we are currently on day 418. So that gives us, around 100 days for this new all-time high to happen. And even though technically we've hit an all-time high, all of the charts and all of the data suggests that we're far from done. Now, I'm going to touch on Hal Finney's $10 million Bitcoin prediction just for context in all of this. I mentioned this in my original monologue, but the idea is that if all of the M1 money, so cash, demand deposits, and traveler's checks, all of those liquid assets moved into Bitcoin, it would be one Bitcoin would be about $10 million. Is that a realistic thing? Yes and no. I think the $10 million mark is a realistic mark, but the difference just may be timing. And we're seeing that right now. I mean, I remember talking about cryptocurrency in my early monologue stages, and Bitcoin had peaked at $25,000 before it came back down to what, like three, four, or five, or something like that. So a lot has happened since those days. And if you think 10, 20 years out from now, another 2 to 3 cycles, if you will, well, we might be getting really close, especially with a lot of the companies that are joining in to the Bitcoin craze. Now, here's where I'm going to go into a deep dive and talk about the building and breaking of this bull case. And really what I did here, I'm going to post all of the things that I'm reading off of today. I'll send you a link. I did use ChatGBT to kind of help me out with this stuff, but I was also using ChatGPT to help poke holes in these perspectives that I have, in these research ideas that I have. And for the most part, yeah, some crazy stuff could happen, but I think that everything's there for all of this bull run stuff to actually happen. So the first thing I'm going to touch on here is regulation. Now, one of the arguments against the bull case for Bitcoin is that governments are going to restrict on and off ramp access to cryptocurrency. So what that means is they're just going to make it hard to buy crypto. They'll say, if you buy it, we're going to tax the hell out of it, or they'll say that it's not allowed in this country or this state. And while I do think that can happen, we're seeing a lot of changes in two major areas. One is governments and people that have totally flipped their perspective on how they're handling Bitcoin. China is a perfect example. 2, 3, 4 years ago, they banned all mining. And currently, not only are they allowing mining, but now they're starting to look at different ways to implement Bitcoin. Similarly with South Korea, they banned Bitcoin, and now they've taken away that ban. So lots of changes there. And the other part, as far as the United States is concerned, is there's so many major financial institutions that are now a part of this Bitcoin narrative that it doesn't make any sense financially for the United States government to restrict people's access to cryptocurrency. I read a chart the other day that showed that the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF is the fastest growing ETF in BlackRock's history. I think it reached a $2 trillion market cap or something like that, or I don't know what the exact number is, but it reached a historical market cap twice as fast as some of its other ETFs. I mean, that's pretty wild. So just because of all of those financial companies are now in the fold and different governments around the world are changing their ideas, I think it's less and less likely that governments will heavily restrict access to crypto. And even then, if people want it, they're going to get it. Now, the next point here is volatility, right? I hear it all the time that Bitcoin isn't a good store of value because it's so volatile. Okay, sure. Yeah, it's volatile. But also we have to understand that higher prices reduce volatility by percentage terms over time, right? Like today, if Bitcoin dropped $50,000, well, that's a 50% decrease, which is a lot. But if Bitcoin gets up to $2 million and it drops by 50,000, well, that's not really a big deal, is it? So even though the volatility will still remain, and even if Bitcoin is worth $2 million, it can still drop to 1.5 or 1.25 or even below 1 million. That's definitely possible, but generally speaking, volatility will reduce because there's more money in the pool, less people wanting to sell. And so what people will notice is Bitcoin is volatile during these, I'm going to call them seasons of Bitcoin, where prices are moving upwards. We're towards the end of the 4-year cycle. And then right after that peak happens, everyone sells, and so the price plummets. Yeah, it's volatile during those times. But if you pay attention in the entire rest of the time of that 4-year cycle, it's actually not that volatile at all. So I'd urge people to do their research, zoom out and look at the long-term aspect of Bitcoin charts when it comes to volatility, and just realize that over time, volatility will go down. And another aspect I got into or looked into was scarcity and wealth distribution. Some people would look at Bitcoin and say, well, there's not enough of Bitcoin, so, all the people that have Bitcoin are just going to be, like the wealthy people of the world, and no one else is going to be able to use it. So why am I getting into Bitcoin in the first place? And again, that's not a bad perspective to have, but I would ask you this, like, are you not going to get a job, or are you not going to start a business because Jeff Bezos is out there or Elon Musk is out there? That's the same system that we have set up today. There's a very few people with all of the money, and then everyone else has very, very little. So in essence, Bitcoin is more or less set up the same way as current fiat systems are. So even though it is scarce, look into how Bitcoin is divided. You can go into 8 decimal points, below zero that can show that you can divide Bitcoin up into. So even though it is scarce, those tiny little fractions of Bitcoin still add up to something. So you don't have to own $100,000 worth of Bitcoin. You don't have to own one Bitcoin. You just have to own some. And I think it'll be a very good investment long term. The next point that I researched was energy consumption. A lot of this to me is something called FUD in the crypto world, FUD, so fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And really what it is people saying like, well, Bitcoin and the network uses too much energy, and so it's not something that we should invest in. Okay. I mean, kind of true, but not really. There's one article that talks about the unused hydroelectric power in Canada. And more or less, without getting specific into the numbers, Canada has enough unused hydroelectric power to almost run the entire Bitcoin network by itself. So even if that's half right, what I'm saying here is that there's enough excess or unused energy in the entire world to run the Bitcoin network multiple times over. All it really takes is little flexibility here, some innovation. People start using dams, fucking volcanoes, solar panels, and different types of energy generation to mine Bitcoin, and problem solved. So the energy consumption factor, yes, again, there is some truth to that, but it's I don't think it holds a lot of weight, especially in today's day and age. Now, something that seems to hold a lot of weight in today's conversation is quantum computing and its future threat to Bitcoin encryption. Now, let's be very honest with this. Yes, if someone had a functional laptop-sized quantum computer in front of them right now, and that same person knew how to write code for that quantum computer, they could probably do something harmful to the Bitcoin network. But the realistic timeline for that scenario is 20 years away. And here's why. Quantum computers are so sensitive that vibrations from a car driving hundreds of meters away can introduce mechanical noise that disrupts the system. Electromagnetic interference from common electronics like a microwave in a break room or someone's cell phone can destabilize qubits, which are the little bits that quantum computers used for processing. Temperature changes can influence the system, or air pressure changes. Okay? And the big picture with all of this is there's only a few companies that actually have the materials and the resources to build these computers. And so while there may be a rogue state or a rogue person or group that tries to build their own quantum computer, it doesn't seem realistic that they'd be able to build it, understand the coding aspect, and use it to attack the Bitcoin network within the next 10 years. The amount of things that you need to make a quantum computer and to hold that quantum computer close to absolute zero is not something that you're going to find in someone's garage. Like, this is stuff that requires massive investment and planning. So that's from the quantum side. Now, on the Bitcoin side, there's already network defenses that are being researched, and they can be added to the Bitcoin network in the near future. One is called Schnorr signatures. That's being researched right now. Same thing with Merkle tree signaling and Lamport-style post-quantum schemes. Those are all being researched right now. So even though it is a little threat to Bitcoin, people in the development community or the dev community are already exploring quantum-resistant Bitcoin proposals and just ways to prevent those attacks from happening or damaging the Bitcoin network. Now, the next big point here would be competing chains. So things like Ethereum, Solana, altcoins, whatever, and CBDCs or central bank digital currencies. So the conversation or the argument here is that, well, Ethereum, Solana, Ripple, all these other coins have more use cases and are easier to use than Bitcoin. Okay, sure. As far as that goes, while there is some validity there, the big difference goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning of this recording today. There's only going to ever be 21 million Bitcoin, period. Those other coins and some of those other coins, that's not the same. It doesn't work the same for coins like Ethereum, Solana, and Ripple. At times, with certain cryptos, people can create millions more or even billions more coins. And when that happens, you're cutting the value of those coins in half, or you're debasing it, similar to what the US is doing by printing so much money. But that's a conversation for another day. So as far as competing chains and how those things affect Bitcoin, I really do think that we're going to see an ecosystem of coins where things are working together. Things like Ethereum and Bitcoin will be like your gold and silver of the market. And then all of the other altcoins will have their own value in maybe a specific industry or a specific company, whatever it may be. But I mean, Bitcoin has the edge, right? It's decentralized. At this point, it has global name recognition, and it can be upgraded in ways that other coins cannot. Now, the CBDC angle for this point here, yes, CBDCs would cause a little shakeup in the crypto world, but think about it. If your bank, let's call it Bank of America, if Bank of America wants to have a CBDC, they would probably also offer access to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and maybe 3 to 5 other top coins in the crypto world. Just because it doesn't make sense for them to just offer a cash alternative or a cash alternative in crypto without also offering their customers access to other cryptocurrency. I mean, like, who would buy that if Bank of America is like, hey, take this digital currency that we created. Okay, Bank of America, what can I do with this digital currency? And they're like, nothing. You can't do anything with it. We're just going to hold it for you. That doesn't make any sense. So what probably will happen is Bank of America will issue its own digital currency, or the United States will issue its own digital currency. People will use that in any way that they want, but some of those people will use it to buy Bitcoin or to buy Ethereum or other coins. And so those CBDCs are kind of like mini Trojan horses for Bitcoin adoption, right? And it all works in the government's favor and the bank's favor. Every transaction, they're getting a little bit of a fee. So I don't see why they wouldn't do that, right? Now, the next point here along the line involves public sentiment and government distrust, right? A lot of people think that Bitcoin is a safety net in authoritarian regimes, and it is. It gets tough to figure out how this plays out long term. But I don't think there's any way that at least the United States can say, hey, we're not allowing you to use Bitcoin, or we're not allowing you to mine Bitcoin. I just don't see that as a possibility anymore. Not with BlackRock, not with BlackRock's ETF, and not with all of the other major companies that are investing into Bitcoin. And even if that were to happen, people can use VPNs to evade the censorship of Bitcoin. They can travel to other countries or use other connections that they have to trade and move money around the world, just avoiding those restrictions, right? So as long as governments around the world continue to show a friendly position towards Bitcoin, I do think that you're going to see less censorship, more adoption in first world countries and G7 countries, I guess we'll call it. And then in third world countries or countries where their financial situation isn't as strong, I think those people will look outwards to the rest of the world, see that Bitcoin is working, and buy into it to make sure that they don't lose all of their own savings and all of their own wealth in the country where they live that's failing. You know, I'm thinking of someone in Zimbabwe. I'm thinking of someone in Venezuela. I'm thinking of someone in Argentina or any other country that has a shaky financial situation. You know, those people will absolutely invest in Bitcoin to get away from that authoritarian regime and their distrust in their government. But another key point about this global situation is a few things that are happening, okay? And this is where I want people to really do their own research and figure out what's going on globally. I learned about some of this stuff fairly recently. Now, the one aspect that could cause all of this bull market situation to change is the global bond market stress, right? Currently, the global bond market is under stress because investors aren't buying long-term government debt like they used to, which is forcing interest rates to stay high. When those rates are high, it's harder for businesses and regular people to borrow money, which slows down the economy and makes risky assets like crypto more volatile. So if the bond market stress rips apart and that market blows up for some reason, well, that could negatively impact crypto. Now, I'll let you decide on what's going to happen, but from everything that I've seen, that's part of the equation, but I don't think it's going to have a massive impact on the situation this year. Now, I could be wrong. I could be wrong about all of this. There could be something that happens similar like the 2008 housing crisis that totally shakes things up, and everything that I said today will be invalid because of it. And I do think we have to be careful right now because that 2008 type of situation is happening right now in China. China's real estate market is struggling because big developers borrowed way too much money and they can't pay it back. There is something like 400 million square feet of real estate in China that is unfinished. People thought that they were going to have apartments and homes and all this stuff, and there's just fucking tons of buildings that are just empty or unfinished. And since real estate is a massive part of China's economy, this slowdown could ripple out globally. If you remember the Evergrande thing a couple years ago, that stuff is still happening. We're still seeing that play out in China right now. So I would urge everyone to learn about that and pay attention in the next year or less, because things like that happening in China, if that were to collapse, that is 100% going to have an impact globally. And I don't know what could happen, but I would imagine it would impact crypto in some way, probably negatively. But there's also another side to that. What if China's population sees that the housing market's going to collapse and they decide to take their money and put it in Bitcoin to avoid any of the stupidity that their own government is doing? That's a possibility. So while the real estate collapse in China would be a big problem, how people handle it and what they do with their money after that collapse or during that collapse is just as important as the potential of that collapse. But all of these are unknowns, right? But things are changing. There's countries moving towards crypto right now, like South Korea, Turkey, Nigeria, the UAE, Brazil, and El Salvador, which is one of the first countries to do it. You know, some of those countries, like I mentioned earlier, South Korea was banned crypto and, was really, really strict on how you could buy it, how you could sell it, how you could move it within their country. So that flip is huge. Similar to some of the other flips that we've seen. I've talked about Jamie Dimon before. And even Warren Buffett. I remember one of my friends asking me in probably 2012 about why crypto was good when he had heard Warren Buffett talk so negatively about it. And I told him that I just didn't think he was looking at the right stuff, or I just don't think he read enough on Bitcoin or what it could do. And fast forward to today, well, Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, invested in something called Nubank, which is a bank, I believe, out of Brazil that invested in cryptocurrency. And he sold some of the shares from Nubank at a profit because it was just good timing. So watch what people do and not what they say always, and make sure you're doing your own research when it comes to this stuff. There's companies flipping too. Google, Fidelity, Franklin Templeton, like all the major financial companies and tech companies are coming to crypto like never before. And it's all on the heels of the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF last year. So that was a lot of the major points that I went over with ChatGBT and all the data that I've been learning here, okay? But let's recap and get into my prediction here, okay? Halving was last April. I'm looking at a 480 to 530 day window after April. So sometime between August of this year and November of this year, I expect to see a true all-time high, followed by a 3-year drawdown. Okay? Now, what that's probably going to look like in real time is whenever that moment is where the true all-time high hits, it's going to drop by 20 to 30% within 2 weeks, maybe less. And it will continue to bounce and go down for another 12 to 16 months. And then prices will flatline for about a year, and then they will slowly start to go up, and the cycle will repeat itself. So here's my specific predictions for this year. I think the floor, the base case for Bitcoin's all-time high this year is between 150 and 180,000. This aligns with historical cycle peaks hitting 150 to 200% above the previous lows. And a lot of the other forecasts that other companies have put out are right in that range. Okay. Now, there is a bullish scenario where more companies get into Bitcoin. Maybe there's a supply squeeze where so many people want Bitcoin, but there's not enough on exchanges, and so the price just absolutely skyrockets. I think that scenario, if that were to happen, Bitcoin can hit somewhere between 180 and 250. Now, I've seen people predict that Bitcoin's going to get to 300, 400, or even 500 by the end of the year, and that's just not realistic. It could happen if absolutely everything works perfectly, but the odds of that happening are very low. So that's the bullish scenario, 180 to 250. And then the bearish scenario is maybe it only hits 120 to 140. Now, I don't see that. I've looked at the charts every single day for the past 6 months, and I'm not seeing it. When you zoom out and you look at RSI and MACD, I don't see it. Everything is in a really good range. Everything looks like we're pointing towards 150,000 to be the floor, and should happen sometime between August and November of this year. I did try and narrow down a more specific window of when this all-time high could happen, and I'm expecting that to happen sometime between the first 2 weeks of September and the middle of October, somewhere in there. But that could totally change based on tons of the points that I've already discussed today. You know, if the global bond situation or the Chinese real estate situation plays out negatively in the next month, well, that changes the timing of that. If tons more companies decide to buy up all of the Bitcoin and there's none left on exchanges, well, then that all-time high could happen next week. So I want everyone to take a step back when I'm talking about these predictions and realize that there is loads of moving parts that could affect when these things happen. But really, I do think this is going to happen, guys. I've been talking about this for years. Go back and listen to all of my crypto updates. Look at my crypto monologue and listen to the stuff that I've said before and that I've been talking about for a long time. This is the time that I've been talking about. Now, if you want to get into cryptocurrency, now is not the best time. Just because if you did put money into cryptocurrency, you'd have to sell before you hold on to it for a year, and you have tax issues and stuff like that. If you're interested in buying into crypto, I urge everyone to wait about 18 months. Set a timer, 18 months from today. June 11th, June 12th, 18-month timer. And when that happens, you put money in, and then you forget about it for another 2.5 years. And then whenever you open up your wallet at that point, you should have a smile on your face. All right. Now here's the final perspective, okay? Sometimes narratives matter more than facts, especially when it comes to politics or the situation like energy, right? If the narrative that governments around the world are putting out is Bitcoin's terrible, gold is the best, invest in our digital currencies, all of the things that I've talked about today, all the scenarios I just laid out are going to lag a little bit. Okay? But the world is waking up to monetary manipulation. People are waking up to the fact that we're 30-something trillion in debt and we're not going to be able to pay it off. People are waking up to the fact that governments are lying to our faces all the time, and they want a way to protect themselves. Okay? And really, even though Bitcoin is not going to hit $1, $2, $3, or $10 million, Hal Finney's prediction was early but directionally correct, right? So if you think that you're too late to invest into Bitcoin, I think you're off. We are still early. Even when Bitcoin is 500,000 or $1 million, we are still early in those stages. Okay? And again, do your own research, guys. None of this is financial advice. This is just perspectives that I've gained researching this stuff, staying up to date with the industry, and sticking to my guns. I've read a lot on this stuff. I've tried to learn a lot on this episode for you. I'm going to leave a detailed list here of all my sources and the notes that I'm reading off of today, so you know that I'm not just reading off of a script or something like that. But this is an exciting time. And I urge everyone to get in and just do something with their money. Whether that's stocks, money markets, index funds, Roth IRAs, 401ks, gold, silver, or crypto, do something. Make your money work for you. For me, it's been crypto, and I think that because of all these things, this is the time that I've been talking about and that I've been personally waiting for a long time. But this stuff happens every 4 years, guys. Zoom out, do the research, and if you guys have questions, reach out. Go to the website at dueltoday.com, share the episode, and if you have any questions, reach out. Send me a message on the website. I appreciate your support. I wish you all the best of luck in this exciting time in crypto. And I hope to be posting a little bit more about crypto in the coming months. But there's a lot of work to do and a lot of exciting things happening. So I'm not sure what the future of the podcast will hold. I do want crypto to be a part of that. But I kind of want to see how this plays out and see if my predictions were kind of accurate or if I've been hallucinating for the past 10 years. Guys, as always, thank you for your time. Have a good rest of the day. And as always, begin the duel, win the day.